mamas and parents. So today is the last installment of the sexual intimacy kind of series I've been running. And today I'm getting into the pursue, withdraw, or pursue, reject cycle and how to break that. What I mean by that is if you are getting in a habit of one person is like asking more for sexual intimacy and activity, and the other is saying no a lot, and that you guys start seeing each other as in these roles as like, I'm always asking, you're always rejecting, and it just feels like a dead end loop. That's what I'm talking about. So if you can picture a scenario that might be resonant for you, like let's say it's late at night. Okay, maybe the baby or children finally asleep after a day where you're just consumed with caregiving and getting them settled, right? Let's say like you're in the kitchen, just getting the dishes in the dishwasher. You're exhausted not just from the things to do, but just, the responsibility on your shoulders. And let's say your partner is like, chilling somewhere, scrolling on their phone or whatever. But maybe he or she is also sitting with just a sense of distance. Like, where is my spouse? We don't connect the way we used to. We're not intimate the way we used to be. And maybe when, you pass by, like your spouse, like kind of reaches for you. Hey, like want to come sit over here, some kind of invitation. And maybe you hesitate because you see that desire and there's like man, I'm not feeling it and I'm just going to disappoint him again and again, right? If I sit down, he's going to want something and I just don't have it in me, but I also just don't want to disappoint him. And it's like, well, I'm kind of tired. I'm going to go to bed. And, the spouse is like nodding, but it's like, man, like I'm just getting rejected over and over. And again, there's maybe it's going unsaid where you guys are both feeling this and not saying it, or maybe it's getting reactive and like bickery, right? And whether it's resigned and quiet or reactive, like that's a dead end loop. And I'm sure neither feels good, right? Because there's guilt there, or a shame spiral, or belief systems. Oh, I must not be wanted. And again, I'm using like an example of, let's say, the woman saying she's tired and the spouse being like, I want more, but that could be flipped as well. And so, this could be in either role, and it really doesn't matter who's in which role. It's more about the dynamic and what's going on. Okay. And there might be just global ideas coming up like, I guess it's just going to be different now, or I'm not wanted, or maybe I'm not going to be desired. And maybe baby's just more important than me and that's how it's going to stay, et cetera. And so you may not realize that you're just caught in a really common relationship pattern, especially after having kids. And again, this is not just directly in postpartum stage. It continues. It will persist because when kids are young, it's still pretty consuming and the responsibilities are large. And when habits start to form in the postpartum, they continue if they're not addressed. Okay. So basically we're talking about a cycle where one partner is reaching for closeness and sexual intimacy in particular, and the other one is pulling away. And it's not because there's not love or desire, but there's usually some kind of protection going on. And what I mean by that is if there is a fear of getting rejected or a fear of disappointing that's tied up in these cycles, then instead of it being a moment where it's simply about desire, spontaneity, responsiveness to desire and things like that, it becomes loaded and it feels like a pressure system and it starts to take on a larger meaning. Okay. I'm always asking, they're never asking, or vice versa. I'm getting rejected all the time. Like when this starts becoming a thing, for lack of a better word, it becomes something bigger than just that moment. And then it's going to be depriving you guys of being able to have moments like that of spontaneity or, just something exploratory or lovely, or just, just in the moment where there's not too much thinking or planning or intentionality behind it. And then it can leave both of you feeling misunderstood, feeling hurt, feeling again in some other way like you're on your own in the relationship. So, and of course you don't want that, and you guys don't deserve that. So usually in these cycles, again, it's like you're trying to protect yourselves from further disappointment, from it becoming a bigger issue, from it, if we just kind of skirt around it, dance around it, if we accuse each other, then, somehow I won't have to sit with how uncomfortable this is, or sad this is, or upsetting this is. Okay. But if we stop avoiding, and reactivity is avoiding too. So like if you are skirting around the issue, or if you're like snapping and yelling at each other about it, it's still getting avoided because you're not having an authentic and a reciprocal discussion about this. When the one who's pursuing experiences the avoidance or the pull away, sometimes that can prompt like going in harder, asking more, pressuring more. And then that increased pressure can then make the partner who's been like withdrawing or denying, or, whatever you want to call it, will that pressure gets like real palpable, and they might pull away even further. And so do you see it's like this reciprocal loop where, again, you're both trying to protect yourselves, but it actually feeds into each other. Like both of the behaviors start feeding into more withdrawing, more pursuing. Okay. And it's really important to see this as a dynamic that you're both participating in, rather than saying, well, you're just rejecting me all the time. Well, you're just pressuring me all the time. It's more complicated than that. You're both participating in this. Like if you imagine a figure eight, okay, it's like you're both participating in a feedback loop with each other about this. All right. So remember, when there's sleep deprivation and hormonal changes and identity shifts, and, there could still be physical recovery and changes in the body that maybe one or both of you are feeling insecure about, it's going to affect the emotional availability you have for each other. There's like, in sexual intimacy, there is a sense of liberation, freedom, playfulness that's required, and not required, but it's just part of it. And so when that starts to erode and it goes from that to more pressure, then you guys need to offer each other some regulation in your nervous system, some care, some reassurances. When you start to go out of sync, to find each other again and be able to get back in sync. And part of that, again, it's going to be like not blaming each other, but rather being curious and saying, what dynamic are we getting into here? Again, that the shift from you're doing this, it's adversarial, like you're on opposing teams, to what are we doing? How are we handling this? All right. Now, I want to get in a little bit to the fears that are going on underneath both partners in both roles. So usually underneath the one who's, in more pursuit, right? Who's looking for more, who's asking for more of the sexual connection, can be some fear and unmet longing and frustration. Like, maybe I'm not desired anymore. Like, what if we turn into roommates? What's going to happen to our relationship if we lose this intimacy? Maybe I'm not important, right? I'm getting ignored. And so the person in this role is like, they want reassurance. They want closeness. Maybe it's, maybe for them, physical, closeness and, sexual closeness is a way that really communicates love and, being cherished to them too. You'd have to ask. It's different for everyone. Feeling like they're being chosen again and again. So when these like fears come out of that pressure, frustration, and maybe it's not even articulated, maybe they can't even articulate to themselves why this is so angsty and so upsetting, and it comes out as frustration and pressure. Well, the other partner is going to hear it as, oh, well, you're failing me. Do you see? You're not enough for me on some level. You're not giving me what I need. Okay. So again, when there isn't like an attunement to what's going on inside and being able to communicate that in a way that's not like, lashing out or passive aggressive comments or whatever, it's not really getting communicated. What's happening inside isn't getting communicated, and it feels like an attack. And so when something feels like an attack or gets perceived as an attack, the partner who's been withdrawing is just going to withdraw more. Okay. Because what's happening for them is they might be feeling overwhelmed, like, oh, I'm not enough for my partner. I'm constantly disappointing them. or feeling pressured to perform or participate when their body is not there, when their mind is not there, the desire is not there. And it can get into a point where it's like intimacy becomes, I don't know, it's like you're in school and there's a test you're failing or something. It becomes one more thing on a checklist instead of what you guys would want it to be, which is truly fueled by desire and connection and love and things like that. So their fears might sound like, well, if I even open the door, if I even come a little bit closer, boy, it's going to be more pressure for sex. Or, man, no matter what I do, it's never going to be enough. I'm never going to be enough. And these are when thoughts go global like that. I just can't meet these expectations right now. So what does that mean? It's almost like it's easier to go and shut down than face, this assumption that like, I can't be what they need. Okay. So that distance and withdrawing then becomes like shields for them, a protective strategy, not because there isn't caring or because there isn't a desire to connect, but because they're like, oh, whenever I start to hear that pressure, like I just feel inadequate. Okay. And so then do you see how, as I explain this, that you both in these roles are sitting with these deep, deep fears about being loved, accepted, wanted, not being enough, being too much, etc. And you're doing that on your own. Like if you're not sharing that and letting each other into actually what more deeply, like what's going on a deeper level, it's just coming out as punchiness or shutdown or annoyance. And that's really like a surface level, just reactivity rather than meeting like really seeing what is going on for each other and in the getting played out in the dynamic. Okay. So once you realize, oh, there's a pattern here and this pattern is actually the issue and the pattern, the infinity loop, and that loop we're getting into is actually communicating something to each other that's not our intentions. Right. Then there's like oh. And what I mean by that is it's like you're out of the cycle, stepping down, looking at it and being like, oh, that's not actually my intention, or that's not actually their intention. Okay. And when that happens, it deflates some of the angst, and it's like, it opens an avenue to say, oh, if we can actually talk about what's going on here, what's getting triggered here, then we're not going to be stuck in this dead end loop. It's going to be a different avenue to have conversations like this and find our way back to each other. So remember, one of you is protecting against pressure and failure, a sense that you're not enough. And the other is like, I'm too much. My needs are not going to be met. I'm not desired, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So again, when the conversation shifts about this, when the awareness and conversation shifts, it goes from defensive, like I always say, shields and swords are not out anymore. And actually it's an opening, a softening. And it's like, oh, I didn't realize that you were sitting with that fear. I didn't realize when I did that, that's the meaning you made out of that. And, oh, I don't want you to feel pressured. I want you to want this, right? And then empathy is going to take center stage here. Empathy is going to soften everything if it's genuine. I'm not talking about going through any motions here, but for it to be genuine, and curiosity. And that is going to change completely how you guys are relating with each other. That's going to be what's going to interrupt that dead end loop. So even just honestly asking how something lands, that's going to help deflate any assumptions. So if you notice making assumptions like, oh, they must be thinking this or they must be thinking that, stop that. Just ask. Like, hey, what is it like for you when I ask? What is it like for you when I say, no, I'm tired? How does it land? What are you assuming I mean? This is what I'm assuming. Okay. Oh, no, that's not what I mean, right? I see this all the time with my couples. It's like we are sitting and going under that cycle loop and seeing what's going on and what those assumptions are. And every time in every session, I see, both members of the couple like open their eyes and be like, oh, that's not how I want you to feel. That's not what I meant. That's not the message I'm trying to give. But that all gets muddled because it's just again in this dead end loop. So again, I just want to recap this. Realize that you guys are in a cycle that you're both feeding into. Okay. It's not neither of you is the enemy. Okay. So you're getting into a pretty familiar dynamic when you're able to see that, step out of it, and choose to communicate with more curiosity, with more empathy, that is going to change the conversation and the possibilities. And then when you are able to interrupt that loop, then it's like, okay, well, then how do we find our way back to each other in a way that isn't triggering and feeling either pressure or shut down or reactive? And I'm going to mention something I mentioned last week, which is when you let go of a specific end game in your sexual encounters, and it's more playful, or it's more like there's a freedom to it. Like if you're just asking for general intimacy, hey, can we cuddle here, without an expectation? And maybe you even need to reassure the one who pressures, or who asks more. Maybe you need to reassure, like, hey, I'm not expecting anything specific. Can we just cuddle here? Can we take a shower? Can you hold my hand? Just little things like that is going to work better than specific sexual expectations, because that might lead somewhere where you're in a more spontaneous place where actually the connection takes precedence, and then the rest will come, because the closeness is going to become more of a pathway to more intimacy and sexual intimacy, rather than like a specific request or a specific expectation. Every cuddle or moment of connection or sweet thing or presence is going to lead somewhere. And it can just be more in the moment. And so it helps reassure the partner who's been like avoiding or shutting down to get out of that pressure system. And so being more flexible, shifting the kind of request and how the request is made can help so, so much. So instead of being like, hey, can we have sex tonight, for, like with an intended specific outcome, it's like, hey, can we cuddle? Can we take a shower? Can I give you a bath? Time together without a rigid expectation, basically. Okay. Even just laughing together, like hugging, sitting really close on the couch. Basically you're trying to make it like pressure free, safe. And actually that safety is going to be like the fertilizer. That's silly to say, but like the fertilizer for sexual desire to slowly return. So I hope this was helpful. Subscribe to my podcast here and on YouTube to get more support and insight into your relationship health after kids come. And if these conversations, if you notice that they're really hard to have and so much defensiveness comes up, check out my coaching offers in my show notes below. I'm here for you and your family. Goodbye.